Welcome back
to
Life After College.
the Life After College Athletics podcast.
As you leave a sport, figure out your place in the world. How do you adapt and bring the lessons you learn?
The only person that is going to care about what you do is yourself.
The most selfless thing you can do is chase your dream.
The best athletes are the ones who are ready when that opportunity comes.
Your thoughts will lead to your actions. Your actions repeatedly will build the confidence, and the confidence will allow you opportunities that because you've done the work, now I can take advantage of the opportunity.
Nobody cares if I don't work out. Nobody cares if I don't go do the little things. Coach isn't here to chirp in my ear.
If you can get other people to say yes to you, there's nothing that you can't have.
Hit the frickin' dirt every single day.
Just showing up. Showing up is the hardest part of anything now.
Welcome back to the Life After College Athletics podcast. Today on the show, we have Hayley Brodeur. Hayley ran track at Eastern Connecticut State University. Along with serving as a two-time captain for the Warriors, she was also awarded Female Athlete of the Year in 2019. Upon graduating school, Hayley started out as a teacher in the San Francisco Bay Area. Since then, she has had various roles in sales and is now the head of GTM at Drivetrain Revenue, where she advises 8+ companies on their go-to-market strategy. She is a strong advocate for AI and the effective proper use of it to increase productivity and outcomes. Welcome to the podcast, Hayley.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Happy to have you join us. We're excited to share your story and dive into a little bit about yourself. I think you have a unique story to tell and how you switched careers and transitioned, and would first love to get a 2-minute drill, who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I am the head of go-to-market and sales at Drivetrain Revenue currently, but I started out as a teacher. I lived in Connecticut for all of my life, and when it came time to get a job, it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I decided to go teach in a state that needed teachers more than Connecticut does. In California, I got a job in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I moved there. I was a first grade teacher for a year and then a third grade teacher for a year at a different district. I moved from the East Bay to the South Bay. And after being in the heart of Silicon Valley, seeing all the startups, all the tech, I really wanted to see if this was something that I could do. And so I applied to about, oh my gosh, countless startup jobs for an entry-level sales position. It was a tough time at that point to be getting into tech. There was like a round of layoffs and it was just in general difficult. But one director of sales at a seed stage company took a chance. I was their founding BDR. After doing that for about 7 months, I was promoted to an AE after some restructuring. And then I decided to join Drivetrain and follow the director of sales who started the company just because I really enjoyed working for him and believed in the mission. So now I do outbound enablement and AI implementation into revenue orgs.
How is it to explain what you do to your grandma now? Like, I know, especially like working as a software engineer at Oracle, they would always ask me like, "Oh, I don't understand what the cloud is. Like, how does that work?" And so coming out of college and like having that job, it was like really hard for me to explain to what I do to people. Is that something that you relate to right now?
It's funny because my grandpa actually did recently ask me what I did, and he sat me down and he was very serious about it because obviously he must have asked my mom prior or someone, and he was like, "Can you just explain to me exactly what you do?" And the easiest way for me to explain what I do really is I help train business development representatives who want to get into tech and do really well and work in this startup environment. A lot of times startups don't have the budget for like an experienced BDR. They come right out of college and they need to learn the ropes really fast. So I tell them I tell them how to cold call, like how to write a good email to get someone interested. And like, I kind of try to stay out of the AI arena just because it is so difficult to explain, because probably the biggest part of my job is prompt engineering, to create workflows for these revenue orgs that I work in. And that's not something that's easily explained to your grandpa, but the one of the things that I do, the main thing that I do is I teach. And that's an easy segue from what I was doing Now I'm just teaching adults in a very different setting.
Yeah, it's a good point. How has been the transition from going and teaching first grade in these, kids in California to now teaching adults? What's the difference you notice between like those kind of students?
Yeah, it is interesting. When I started teaching, I was a first grade teacher, and I was teaching online because of the pandemic. And it was hard to see the kids online, especially in first grade. I had a lot of English language learners. There was a lot of different complications. I still teach online to adults, now. But I always tell people that teaching will be the hardest job I think I'll ever have, because and the way that I interviewed too to get a sales role, as I said, I was like, I sell ideas to kids all day who do not want to be sold to. They do not want to learn what 1 plus 1 is. They don't care. And I think that really summed up teaching really really fast for people, because when people come to me at this point, they know what they need, and they think they know where they want to optimize and things like that. And that's different than a child who like really just wants to run around and play outside, but I have to get them to sit and do their math. And I tried to do it in a creative way. So I think that translated really well into the business development role, because a business development role is all about being creative, standing out, and giving your value prop really quickly. And for kids, like, you lose them like that. So you better have something very engaging for them. So I actually find it to be easier to teach adults, especially too when they're promised commission. Kids are not
Yeah,
promised commission.
there's
I
some
wasn't a
incentive.
big bribery teacher, so it's definitely different.
In a way, you do incentivize the kids, and maybe that's what helps you learn potential ropes to be such a high performer early in your career. Because, like you mentioned, when you're working with kids, a lot of the time they don't want to learn, and they're just probably the most stubborn people. But if you take that and some of the kind of high level concepts of sales of, hey, the ultimate goal is want this person to interact with me for this reason, but I need to break it down. Okay, these are their motivations, this is what they're interested in, attacking it from that point of view is probably the best opportune way to create a sale or create a commission.
It
Love to
absolutely,
hear your take on that.
yeah. I mean, it definitely is. I mean, and two, kids, at least I have the same kids all year. So like I have the same class. So like once I figure out what everybody's motivated by, it's a lot easier to sell them the idea. Cold outbound, you're reaching out to someone who doesn't want to be reached out to. They don't want to be sold to. They don't even know, that this product exists, most likely, because I work in very early stage startups. So it's definitely, there's pros and cons to each for sure, but finding the motivation in sales is always a little bit more difficult. And the AI that I use creates a way to do research and background on the person and the company that they're reaching out to, so that they can somewhat have an idea of what they're kind of looking at. I mean, for me, one of my biggest use cases for AI is scraping a company's 10K and picking out the exact initiatives that would apply to the value proposition that you're bringing, so that at least I teach everybody, when you reach out, you should have a reason, and it should be very well researched, and it should be should have the right intentions. And uh, scraping a 10K, finding the things that the company is going to be focused on in the next year, is a great way to do cold outbound. But they're long, and I don't want to read through them, so I have the generative AI do it for me.
Hey, use the tools that you have, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I totally get that. It saves me a bunch of time. We have, like, I don't know if you're familiar with BAMSEC, basically the SEC website, but it's a little more consolidated. So you can like find all of the 10K, 10Qs, SEC filings for companies in one place. But same thing, like you still got to do keyword searches, and it takes 10 minutes to find a couple of pieces. Whereas now you can use like ChatGPT, and I know there's a couple of other online applications that allow you to scan through those documents, those 1,000-page documents in seconds and find what you're looking for, or even tell it to find 5 things and it does it for you in 30 seconds. Would love to hear how you've used AI in your job to kind of create more efficiency for your work or for those around you.
Yeah, big one for me was just learning how to implement automation into my workflows. I'm not technical. I went to school to be a teacher and I double majored in teaching and sociology. So it was not like this was I just don't have a technical background. But I'm starting to find that if you just kind of try at something hard enough and you sort of start to figure it out, it becomes easier and easier and it's worth it to do. I mean, it's given me basically my career just to figure out certain things that other people don't want to learn. And learning how to integrate automation into a tech stack that already exists was a great way for me to optimize everything that I'm doing. I mean, Copy.ai is the AI that I use. They are built on both Anthropic and ChatGPT, so I can choose which model I want to use. And it runs my life. I mean, I have like transcriptions being analyzed and follow-up emails being written for me, and I have, like if for our CRM we're a small bootstrap company, so like for our CRM we only need like certain amounts of things, but like when I have a call, the AI will pick out what I needed from that call, put it into our CRM. Just so many. And then when I want more customers, we do a lot of referrals because we're a consulting firm, but I use the outbound automation with AI to make it worthwhile to reach out. Like LinkedIn gives me great insights. It's like the head count goes down or something like that. That's usually when I know that they've probably just done layoffs and they need their existing team, to act more efficiently. And so that's like a great signal for me to reach out. Because I don't think AI will ever replace BDRs and SDRs. I'm a big advocate for them. I think that they're one of the most important jobs in the company, and it's an entry level position, and what they do is really hard. I mean, so many people don't want to do it. I mean, at my previous company, we actually did like a phone-a-thon, and we had our engineers cold call for a day. And I absolutely loved the engineers I was working with. I mean, they were so talented. These amazing guys. We had a really great team, actually. And but having them cold call was like terrifying. And for them, and like I was just like, it's not a big deal. It's like no one cares. Pick up the phone. It's gonna be fine, And the guy who ended up winning was an engineer, and he was incredible. Like sat there, I watched him over the phone. He was like paralyzed at first, but then like it picked up and he did really, really well.
I want to combat that, not to test you, but I want to see what your thoughts are, because recently saw a video that basically made a replica of someone and cloned their voice, and it was like close to realistic. You could still tell that kind of robotic, and there's still some glitches in it. But do you ever think like potentially now these cold outreaches will just be automated AI talking back and forth, and then there's a point where the AI doesn't know how to respond, so then it forwards them to a real person?
So like let me rephrase. I don't think it's ever going to be effective. That's where I stand on that, because I know that people are already doing that, but just little things that the AI does like every day, every so often, where I'm just like, it's like right there, but it's not all the way there. I mean,
Yeah.
because like just recently I felt like the AI that was writing my emails and writing like follow-ups and things was British all of a sudden, because it was like using terms that I was just like, I mean, like, you're right there, but that's just not at all the way I would ever speak. And like my brand voice hasn't changed, and I've trained the AI over a certain amount of time to like have it. And I don't know. I forgot keen. That's what it kept saying. It was like, are you keen to like listen more about I was like, no, not keen.
I
I
never
don't
say
want
that.
keen. I was like,
Yeah.
what? Although if you're looking to stand out, I guess that would be a good way to do it. But I do feel like there are just little things, at least for right now, with the models that we have, that I don't think could replace people and sellers. I don't know that we need giant teams anymore, and that's kind of where I come in. I pride myself, but it's more of like I feel strongly that I don't want to go into a company and then because I'm there, they lay off a bunch of people. That's just not what I want to do. I will go in after they've already made a decision to do that for other reasons and then optimize with the team they have. Because ultimately I want to build relationships with teams so that they trust me and they like me. And I'm not there to take anyone's job, all I'm there to do is make their current people faster. And a lot of times when the pressure gets put on teams after a big round of layoffs to still meet the same numbers or exceed them from last year with less headcount, there needs to be a way to have your sellers be more effective. So, I mean, 72%, and this is a Salesforce statistic, of sellers' time is not spent selling. It's been updating, it's been researching, it's been, that's what I'm there to try to optimize.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a super important thing to touch on, especially with maybe people who are from the older generation and don't think AI is a good idea. I think that it really can be a helper. And I think if you just think about like in the industrial age, why did we specialize on, if we're building a car, why do we have these certain workers only work on the chassis and these people only work on the front quarter panel? Like that's all that they do. And it's because if they know that section so well, then they're good at their job and we can just allow them to continue to crank those out and use their skill, right? And so if you can do that with AI, is like if you're an awesome salesperson, allow the salesperson to sell. Don't give them a ton of work outside of just selling, and the company will actually do better because they're actually doing what they're good at. And then you could argue that like, okay, if I sold 100% of the time though, I may get tired, right? Like I would get tired of selling and I'd get tired of it. That's fine. Humans need rest. But I think that what's super powerful about that is if you automate all the other tasks and only thing I need to do is sell and rest, then my rest is actually restful and I'm not having to rest while I write these emails and while I update the CRM and stuff like that. So I think that that's pretty powerful, right? Keep the main things, automate the rest, and then actually get true rest.
Absolutely. I mean, and two, for salespeople, rest is tough when there's a quota, when
True.
there's things that they have to worry about. Because, like, I mean, they're paid well usually. Usually, salespeople in orgs are paid really well. They're compensated for that sacrifice, and if you're really good at it, you're really well rewarded. I remember, I mean, and coming from teaching, this is the thing that blew my mind the most. Is my boss, my current co-founder, who I'm still working with, he was like, look, this is the way I work. He's like, I need you to hit a certain amount of number every month. If you hit it, I don't care if you hit it in the first day or you hit it, at the last day of the month. He was like, if you hit it, you're done. You don't need to do anything else for me. You don't need to report to me. Like, go take a vacation, whatever. We also had unlimited PTO in this particular organization. But for me, that was hard as like a competitive athlete, as I was like, I always was hungry for more. And I mean, that's why we're even having this conversation now. I think if I had taken like the rest of the month off after hitting the number in the first week or whatever, I don't know that would have really grown my work ethic all that much. But coming from being a teacher, I was like, what? I was like, are you serious? He was like, yeah, I'm serious. He's like, I'm dead serious. He's like, why would I? This is your quota. This is what we expect you to produce. When you do, why would you do anything else? Now, I wasn't capped ever there either, commission wise, but it is interesting because salespeople can really only rest once certain things have been hit and they know that they can be. I mean, I looked at it from a way as like once I hit my OTE for the month, I could kind of chill out a little bit because that was exactly what I was expected of. But I didn't necessarily stop. No one's taking off, weeks at a time or anything like that. But it was interesting for me just with that situation.
maybe this goes back into your athlete background. You brought it up, like you've had entrepreneurial ventures in like college with the private swim lessons. Can you touch on that? And then has that given you the confidence to leave the teaching job and go do something completely different and have to learn it and basically start from square zero and bet on yourself? Like how has athletics kind of translated into the entrepreneurship, the, betting on myself? Now I work for myself and I help 8 other companies and etc.
Yeah, I mean, being younger, I always wanted to work as hard as I could in the summer because I never wanted to be pressed for money through the year in college. I felt like that was a really scary way to live. I'm watching my brother do it currently, and it's terrifying to me. I mean, like, he came to visit me in San Diego, and he was like, I'm out of money, but I just have the flight back, so we're like good to go. And I was like, hold on, stop. I was like, wait a minute, you're out of money. How are you gonna buy food, water? He's like, I'm gonna figure it out. He's like, it's gonna be fine. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I gave him money, whatever, you know, brothers. But like that was I was like, I never wanted to live like that. And so when I started my swim lessons company, it kind of happened inadvertently. I think that's how a lot of companies get started or whatever. But I was teaching swimming at a pool club, and someone had called me from the pool club and was like, look, these people want a lesson, but they don't want it here, they want it in their own pool because the child isn't comfortable with whatever. And I totally get that because water can be terrifying to kids, even growing up in a place where you're not landlocked or anything. And so I was like, okay, sure. And they were like, we can't take any of the money from you, obviously, but we're just like giving you the job. And then I started from there because there were so many referrals from there because she was like, oh, I want my other friend to do, she really wants to do this. And then at some point I had like 7 kids in one pool at one time because like they just hit me all at once and then they split up the cost and stuff. And it was a great way for me to make money. I mean, it definitely got me through college. And in sports, I mean, I'm taught to be competitive, and that's where the transition to teaching came from because I was like, I can't keep doing the same thing every year. And what I was doing wasn't really the same because I worked for an international baccalaureate school, which is an inquiry-based school that changes quite often how they teach all year. Whereas a lot of the traditional schools, like you're given the Common Core and you teach the Common Core to the same group of kids every year. And I was like, I can't do that. I need something to like compete with. One point I felt like I was competing with last year's test scores with my kids, but that's even still not a good thing to do when you're teaching because it's like, I also know that the standardized testing isn't really all that accurate to what the kids can do. Putting extra pressure on them to do well and like that's not me performing as the kids, and that's not fair. And so when I quit teaching, I didn't have a job lined up in sales, but I knew that so badly that I wanted that change and that this was something that I wanted to do. So I chose to take that chance, knowing that at least I had like my work ethic to fall back on. I knew that I was a hard worker. I was through college, I worked while doing sports, and I was a double major, and in the summer I worked like 80 hours a week. And so it like I definitely knew that I had that at least. And so I was like, that can't work against me. So maybe I will just try this and see how I do. My dad has also been in sales his whole life and always felt like I was built for it, which was good to have that encouragement. But I mean, he sells machinery and I sell tech. It's completely different things. But definitely my past in sports helped me with that.
I think that's
Of sales too. Just like because you're not going to do well all the time, and it sucks not doing well, and like you go through the same slumps as an athlete, especially as a track runner, where the numbers are right there. No one's going to dispute anything with times, and that was, like it's not like, oh well, you played really well on offense, but your defense sucked. Like no, you weren't as good as you were 2 weeks ago, and that's not good.
Yeah, when you ride out those slumps and those deep valleys, we always find that, at least I think those of us that are open-minded, find opportunities on the other side of that. Of course, like you mentioned, being in those slumps suck. You're in the moment and you're like, damn, I keep getting loss after loss. Like, when am I going to stack a win? But I think as long as you have faith in the process, similar to what you did in athletics to achieve the highest level, training isn't always fun. But if you keep showing up every day and finding opportunities, you'll find that next step. And there's not tricks or simple clicks that you can do in your mind. But would love to ask you, what do you do personally when you're in that slump to switch your mindset?
I actually, my biggest slump was in the 200 race. I was recruited to be a 200 runner. I was always a 200 runner. I always resisted the 400 because it is just awful. It's just a horrible race. But my coach, she was like, this isn't really working out, right? I mean, like, your 200 times are good. They're not great. They were really good my freshman year. My sophomore year, I had a really, really hard time. And so going into my junior year, she was like, why don't you just try the 400? She's like, we need a 400 runner. We don't have enough to even have a 4x4. We need one more. Can you just try it? And I have a hard time saying no. And so I was like, yeah, I guess so. And I ended up doing really, really well. So that pivot, I mean, the 400 ended up being my race, unfortunately. It was interesting to take feedback and pivot with it. I think that while I was riding out the slump of the 200, I got into the gym a lot more, and that wasn't something that I was, in high school we had a gym. It was donated to us, and we're a small school, we were lucky to have it, but I didn't know how to lift weights effectively. And I went in there, and you're kind of just walking around and trying out different machines. I don't really know that you can count that as like a lift. Certainly now looking back on it, I can't count it as a lift. And we got a new trainer, like a new weightlifting coach, at our school. And he was like, hey, like, you're not doing well. Let's see what we can do. And adding weights to my regimen of training changed my whole college athletic career. And it really translated well to the 200 as well. Like, I was doing kind of like the explosive stuff. So like the cleans and, oh my gosh, what is that called? What is that?
Like kettlebell swings, stuff like that.
Yeah, what is that?
Snatch.
Hang clean?
Yeah, hang clean, like all that stuff, but it's a certain kind of weightlifting that I'm like totally spacing on because I haven't done it since. But that explosive type of weightlifting like was what changed my life really in college.
I think it's funny when you just how life happens sometimes, right? Like, you got recruited as a 200, and I think about even like my college career. My last game that I played as a D midi, and I was recruited as a LSM. Got honestly really good playing time freshman year. Sophomore year, I hit a slump as well, and I don't understand how. Like, I feel like everyone I talk to, sophomore year and junior year, it's like when yeah, sophomore slump, even in school, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I hit that. We needed some defensemen. I started playing close defense, and then I was like moving down the depth chart. Like, everyone's moving above me. You're just in this terrible slump. And then junior year, COVID happens. So we have 5 games. We're playing Air Force. Then the season's canceled. And then it's like, okay, junior year, I'm a captain. How do I lead people from Zoom? Like, that's really tough to do. You're not playing, you're not like interacting with people in person. And then senior year, like, I still am not playing as much as I'd like. And we only have like 1 or 2 really good D middies, and we need some more. So it's like, what do I have to lose? Like, I'm a senior. Like, at this point I should have, really dug down and gotten my position and solidified it. But that's just not how it happened. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to be a role player. I want to help the team out. So I'm going to go play D midi. And I remember Brady DeHaan, if he's listening to this, senior year after we played Manhattan, he comes up to me and he's like, dude, you're literally have been playing D midi most of this year. You never have done that your whole career, but this was the best game that I've ever seen you play. And it was my last game, and we lost against Manhattan. and it was just done. But I at least felt like I had given everything I could, even if it didn't turn out how I was supposed to. So I think to the question of like when slumps happen, it's like just look for opportunity, right? Like how can I give and how can I provide value to someone else in the team? And then usually if your effort is towards that, it'll end up how it's supposed to end up and you'll feel fulfilled.
I mean, absolutely. Like being that team player, I mean, and that there's like a million business analogies in there. But I mean, even just learning something new, I mean, I really didn't want to get into the realm of marketing, but a lot of times it goes hand in hand with sales. And like, so I learned a little bit of how to market this year. Like it's just, and if you're just not resistant to it and you just let it happen, you just wake up with these new skills that you didn't think that you would ever have. Even prompt
And then
engineering
they
was,
stack on top of each other too.
yeah. I mean, I didn't want when ChatGPT first came out, I just wasn't impressed. I was already personalizing all my emails. Like I was doing everything to be as personal as possible, and I was doing well doing that, and I didn't mind the manual work of it. Um, but and he should like one of our RevOps person showed me, he was like, this is great, this is going to change everything. I was like, this is changing nothing because I can still write a better email than this, and like it's taking me more time to like prompt it and get it exactly the way I want it than it would be just for me to add personalization to it. And then when I was introduced to copy.ai, it completely blew my mind. I mean, like right on my skull. Like I was just like, oh my God. I was like, okay, so this is something I'm going to have to learn. And like little bit by bit, like you learn it. And they have a great head of go to market over there. He taught me like everything I know about hallucinations and like all the things that you need to know if you're going to prompt engineer, and like the frustration that comes with that as well. Cause I was like, no, I said to do it this way. Why didn't you do it this way? Like, so
Technology, man.
yeah. those those generative AI bots, how can they not read my mind? And he told me, he said something that really like changed the way that I looked at it. Is he was like, you have to talk to it like it's an intern who has absolutely no context about anything. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, there we go. I got
It
it.
almost helps you learn in a way, because
Yeah,
like you said, the best way to make sure you understand something is learn it, practice it, and then teach it. And I think the teaching aspect is what you can do on ChatGPT. Some people may not recognize that or realize that, but like you mentioned, you have to talk to it like it's a fifth grader, like it's a kid in kindergarten, because it doesn't understand. So you have to train it. So if you're able to teach something as simple as that, um, take something complex and then teach it on a very simple basis, you probably are better off for it. If you can be like, oh, I know how to do this, then you learn something new about yourself.
absolutely.
As far as what you're working on now, you have obviously like as a young professional, it's tough to not get caught up in work. How do you balance your life with, how do I make friends? How do I, still stay fit? How does that look when you leave college athletics? Because I think when people, me personally too, like when you leave college athletics, I've been working at this for 10, 15 years, my whole life. And so now it's like there's no structure, there's no really anything, and I have to like really control my life and manage my time how I see fit. So how have you managed your time with friends, working out after college athletics?
How do you not let it scare you?
My friends would tell me that I haven't figured that out.
Okay.
But I feel like I have. Like my best friend in California, and she's my best friend to this day, and you know, Kara, if you're listening, this is for you. She'll tell anyone. She'll be like, she works all the time. You don't want to, because like even like there are openings sometimes in like my companies and stuff, and like places, and someone I'm talking to, maybe like even at a social event, like they'll be like, oh, I'm looking for a new job. I don't really like where I'm going, and she's like, don't work for her. You will never ever have a social life. She doesn't do anything. She just works. And I don't think that that's true. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think though for me it was the biggest thing coming out of being in the athletics arena. Like I was training probably 3 to 4 hours a day, which even for a track runner that's a lot, because it's just a lot of running. I did a lot of cross training. there was a lot of times where like after class, I'd just be like, I just want to do an ab workout. And like on the way home, stop at the gym, do something for like 15 to 20 minutes, and then go out. The reality of working in a startup is like that's not a viable option anymore. Nor do I want to be working out 3 to 4 hours a day. I don't need to be in that optimum shape that I was when I was running, 400s. But I try to work out in the morning because I find that if I work out at night, the day gets away from me and it becomes optional.
Mhm.
And I don't want it to be optional. I have a walking pad that's like sitting right next to me right now that I will in a standing desk that can or my desk can lift up, and so I will walk sometimes while I'm doing busy work tasks. But in the for the most part, I work out in the morning and I do classes. I love solid core, which is like the big like mega former workout. It's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. Basically, you're in like muscle stage failure or second degree muscle stage failure the entire time. That's their whole goal.
Mm.
Like when they see you shaking, they're like, "Yep, that's right." And I was like, "I feel like shit. Like I want to stop. Like this is terrible." But the other little catch to them is that there's a cancellation fee and it's a large one. It's like $30 or $40 even, I think, to cancel within 10 hours. I can't even tell you how many times that's probably come in handy for me because it makes me go. It makes
Mm.
like because like in the morning you could be so tired, you don't want to get up, you don't want to do it, you don't want to go. So I go really early. Um, but
But you don't wanna pay the
I
40
don't wanna pay
bucks.
the 40 bucks, 5 days a week,
Yeah,
and nothing gets
sure.
done, and ultimately, you don't feel good afterwards, like, you do feel better once you get up and you do well, I do. I feel better when I get up and I go, and the whole day now is ahead of me, and when I'm done, I usually have a full day of teaching and meetings, and I talk a lot at work, and so I'm exhausted, and the last thing at that point I wanna do is worry about a workout, but if I do want to do another one, I have that option if I have the energy for it. So that's how I balance it now. I think for friends, like, it is hard for me to see them during the week if they're not close. Um, with in regards to California, I used to try to walk with my friends after work a lot because the other thing is, like,
Mm.
it's just a natural way to wake yourself back up because I'd be so tired sometimes at 5, like I could just fall asleep right there and that's, I want to continue my evening. So walking really like just stimulates and wakes everything back up. And I always invite people to go with me there, but it's usually a weekend for me for social things.
Mhm.
Is where I feel that I can really do that.
It's funny you mentioned the walking because I had never really thought about that, until we were talking to Caleb Fossum we had on the podcast a couple weeks ago. And he said some of his relationships in his life are just walking and talking relationships. And so like they literally do nothing else, but they're just like, hey, let's go for a 30-minute walk, an hour walk. I think that's actually cool because it's like you're refreshing your mind, you're talking with someone, you're kind of throwing ideas around there, even just like it's a little bit of a therapy session, but you're still out active and like out in the real world. So yeah, I think that's a cool idea. I've never really thought about that until both of you have said that now.
100%. Also, like talking on the phone, because like when I was in
Yeah.
California, I was away from my home, and most of the people, I mean, all of my friends that I have in California, those were like new friends that I met out there, and when I would walk, I would like call my cousin, who's like my best friend, my mom, and it was a great way to talk to them and stay awake and stay active all at the same time. So even if I wasn't with a friend from there, like physically, I could have my
Mhm.
mom on the phone or, even one of my siblings. Like it was a great way for me to catch up on all my phone calls. Because, two, when I was walking, it was like 8 p.m. their time or so. And so that kind of worked out because it was like right before they would go to bed. Like all their day is done. Dinner is over. It was a good routine to have.
I was going to mention that's super good because you don't have to commit to doing something difficult like once or twice or three times a week. Like you could do something every day that only takes a few minutes of your time to be active. I think new engagements in a switch up of your routine kind of sparks new ideas. I'd love to ask you, when you go on these walks, do you find yourself coming up with new creative ideas? At least I've noticed when I'm on my runs, like I think they're great things. Maybe they're not in retrospect, but I always feel like I come up with the best ideas when I'm outside doing things.
For sure. My boss he really encouraged me to walk a lot of the times when I had first started. Just because he was like, "You're tired. I can like look and see you can only drink so much espresso in a day. Why don't you go walk around the block for a little bit?" There are a lot of times too, just in the startup life where I have to jump back online when I'm done walking, and it actually works to my benefit because A, I'm more awake and stimulated, but B, like I do have other ideas or things I want to try, even if I'm not going to execute at them right then and there. Like I always have my task list going on my calendar, and like I can put it in there, like ideas to start for tomorrow. I absolutely do. I think it's interesting that you say it when you're running. Sometimes it happens to me during the solid core classes because trying so hard not to focus on how much it hurts, how much it sucks, that I'm, like, thinking about the rest of my day, and I'm like, "Oh, I had to do that. I have to do that," whatever, and then, like, by the time it's over, like, I hit the ground running, in terms of, like, everything that I have to do and accomplish with the day. It was interesting, actually, just yesterday, I think it was the day before, the instructor so, like, they have it all sectioned out, and, like, usually per day, there's, like, a two focuses, and one is a leg focus and one is like an upper body focus, and that's kind of what they focus on, but they always do obliques and center core, and the instructor missed the other side of the obliques and just ended the class and like just completely spaced on like the fact that she like missed the other oblique. And I literally was like, I kind of feel weird. Like I was like, this is kind of off. And I like turned to the girl next to me and I was like, did we do like the left side? She was like, no. And I was like, okay, thank God. Cause like for me to have been that spaced out that I missed an entire section of the or that I just did it mindlessly to me was like the craziest thing. I was so deep in thought about what I needed to do for the day that I just like didn't even realize, but that she made me feel a lot better. She was like, "No, I promise you we didn't do it." And the other woman next to me was like, "I have OCD. This is going to be a problem all day." And I was like, "Oh my God. Okay. All right. All right." It wasn't just me. But yeah, I love it. The
Yeah.
doing that kind of stuff.
It's hard not to let the mind wander, especially when you're at the gym or you're working out. Because even if you're focused on like muscle retention and the exercise that you're doing, all it takes is like 4 seconds. You notice something and you're completely off track, even though you're still doing the rep. It's kind of funny how our brain works that way.
Well, like even the trainer is like, stay present in the moment. Think about why you're here. And I was like, I don't want to stay present in the moment because it
I don't
sucks.
want to be here.
My whole leg hurts and you are causing me pain. Like, but yeah, certainly a motivating group they are.
You mentioned like you had friends out in California. When you moved out there, did you know anyone, or you basically lived in Connecticut all your life and went out to California to start, your career? So, how was it trying to make friend groups out there? And then, what advice do you have for people who, maybe they just graduated from college, finished sports, and their sports team was their built-in network when they got to college. So now this is a new thing for them, and they don't know how to create that new environment.
Yeah, I really struggled because I moved in July of 2020. So nothing was open. California was more shut down than I was prepared for. And I also had never had trouble making friends. So like it wasn't even something that crossed my mind when I took the job. Like people were like, "You don't know anyone out there." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And they were like, "So how are you going to meet people?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll just figure it out." And like they're just like, "Okay."
Sounds like your brother
Like
figuring out with his money and his food.
yeah, exactly. Just like that. And I was like, I was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. It'll be fine, whatever. And then I realized everything was closed. And I was like, okay, so maybe this won't be as easy as I thought. And everybody from the East Coast is so great too, because they always were like, well, I have a friend of a friend of a friend who's like there and you should meet up with them. And I did do that a couple times, but nothing really stuck in terms of like a real, like integrating myself into a friend group. My best friends from college were on my track team, still are, you know. And so this was something that I had never come up with before. And so I actually downloaded Bumble BFF, which is like Bumble's like friend dating app, which was funny because I had never been on a dating app before. And now I'm like swiping on women who I want to be my friends. Like it was just the most bizarre like thing for me. But I was like, well, I mean, she looks nice. She's smiling in the picture. I don't know. So I ended up realizing that making friends with other transplants worked really well for me because they also didn't have a system like a support system that was built in a lot of time. Like, and I think about it all the time. Like if I lived in my hometown, I wouldn't be on that app, or even if someone brought somebody else to the group, like I'd certainly be nice and whatever, but I don't think I'd be going out of my way to be like, oh, and let's get coffee and hang out every single day this week so that we're not lonely and like want to die. Like it was definitely a different thing. But I have to say I owe everything to that app because my best friend I met from there, my very first like Bumble date ended up being Kara, who's my best friend to date, and she was much better at the app than I was. Like she continued on it and like found us more friends and people to meet. And I was kind of like, well, I got the one, so like I'm good. And she keeps bringing me candidates, so like I don't really. She vets them and everything, and then I get to meet them afterward.
That's called
It was a
delegation.
great system. But I think for people now, because I mean, I recommend the app 110%. It was amazing and a perfect way to meet people. So I definitely recommend it. But the other piece of it for especially like athletes is to join like one of those like recreational leagues. I never got to that point because I wanted to be in a volleyball league. But I travel a lot for work. And so it was so inconsistent in terms of when I was going to be able to go to the games and not go. It cost money to play. Like, and so I didn't feel like it was an investment. But for other people I know who transplanted, that was a great way to meet people, is to just join like one of those recreational leagues for something that you would like doing. But I do recommend the app for sure.
That's pretty interesting because yeah, I've never. When I moved out to Seattle, I actually found friends out there through the gym. So when I moved out to Seattle, I didn't know anybody except for one of the Canisius lacrosse alumni. But he was like 35. He was actually moving to the East Coast in like 2 months. So we lived in Seattle for like 2 months, and we were like kind of living different lives. He had 3 kids, and
Yeah.
it was different. But regardless, amazing guy. But yeah, so I didn't have anyone. And so I actually met this guy, Ryan Steele, at the gym. And all of my friends out of Seattle came through Ryan. So kind of similar to your story. But yeah, like Ryan and I would always go to the gym. He's like, I see you in here all the time. I don't know why we don't talk. Like we should be buddies. And so we kind of started talking. Ends up, we actually go to the same church. And I didn't know that. And then he introduced me to a bunch of people that he knows. And then it just starts spreading out like that. And yeah, like people I literally invited to my wedding this fall were through Ryan. And yeah, so I think even I have friends who I've met through like mentorships online that I still have never met in person. Actually, one guy we had on the podcast, Ethan Wilson, he's a real estate investor out in Nashville, but I met him on an online community because I was interested in multifamily. So we met that way too. So if people that are listening, like if you have a certain interest, try to even join like an online community too, where you can meet with different people. And maybe one more suggestion, then I'll stop rambling here. But I actually met a guy. Now we live in Colorado. We live in Parker now. But I saw this guy, Luke. He played club hockey at Wyoming, and now he was flipping homes in Parker. And I saw him on LinkedIn, and I just cold DM'd him. So you can cold DM people for work, but you can also cold DM people for friends as well. And so I cold DM Luke, and we got coffee. Awesome guy. Now he's in my Bible study. We keep in touch, and it's like it's a great relationship. So
That's awesome. I mean, like that, all those kinds of things, like that's exactly how I hear about like people getting friends after they've moved. It's really hard to kind of put yourself out there. And at that point, I had no sales background, so putting myself out there was kind of difficult for me. I think now I've definitely warmed up. I mean, like I had wished that gyms and like Pilates studios and places that I could go to meet people were open when I moved, but they weren't. But by the time I had gotten, so I was in the Bay for 2 years, and my final year in California, I moved to Southern California. I landed in San Diego, and Kara came with me. Another girl that we met via Bumble, Juliana, came with us as well. Like we kind of all decided, you know what, we're gonna move. We all lived separately, but we all moved to the same city and had so much fun. But I was in a Pilates class in San Diego after everything had opened up and everything like that. And the girl was mentioning to the instructor that she was from Connecticut. And like, you know, Connecticut being a small state, like my head like whipped around. I was like, I'm from Connecticut. I was like, where in Connecticut are you from? And she was like, West Hartford. And I was like, I'm from the shore. I was like, when did you move here? Like, and the instructor cutting off their entire conversation, by the way, that was it for the instructor. The instructor walked away, like, whatever. I was like, oh my God, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. She was like, no, it's fine. She was like, I just moved here. I was like, I'm doing a travel contract and, you know, I don't know anybody here. And I was like, well, you know me and we can be friends because you're from Connecticut. I just met you randomly. Like I completely opened up from there. She is still one of my good friends to date. She's coming to visit me tomorrow. We're taking a solid core class tomorrow together. Like, because she ended up moving back to Connecticut too. But like, it was so interesting once you had been through knowing that you like not knowing anybody and didn't want anybody to be in that situation. Like it was so much easier for me to be like, well, how can I help you? Like, how can, you know, like I can introduce you to all my friends. Kara was so proud because this one she didn't bring to the group. You know, I brought her. So like it is interesting too. Like no, when someone's had that experience before, they're a lot
Mhm.
more likely to invite you and have that understanding because they know what it was like when they went through it themselves.
And I think people listening would like listen to all this and it's like, wow, it's great that you guys can create so many connections and now you have so many friends. But like me and where I'm at, how do I start?
Yeah.
And so what advice would you give them? At least from, you know, all the stories we've talked about, it seems like when you go out and take action in the real world, that's when you find these friends and that's when you find the opportunities. But if you're just sitting in your apartment all day, like you're not going to create friends that way unless you're online in a community.
For
But
sure.
yeah, what's your advice
And
there?
it's more of like just try it because like what's the worst that's gonna happen? I mean, I even tell this to like the BDRs that I train is I was like, just call them. The worst case is that they're gonna hang up on you or they're gonna swear at you. Who cares? Like, I mean, who cares? So I think that too. It's the same way with friends. Go to I was gonna join a running club. That was going to be my original way of getting to know people, but they no one was running together because of the lockdown. But like I would just join a club that you're interested in and just see and just ask someone or say like, hey, what are you doing after this? Like, do you want to go to dinner? They'll probably say no because they have plans or whatever. It's a last minute thing. But then they'll be like, but I'm free this night and like we can go and do that
Mhm.
then. And so I would just say like putting yourself out there. I do recommend that app. I do think, however, it is geared towards women. I did see some males on there. I don't know if like males use it for the friend reason. I don't know if that was like a tactic or whatever. So I stayed away from the men on Bumble BFF. But I do think that there are a lot of different. I think you know men too. They have other ways of meeting people like the gym or like a basketball league or you know something like that. But that's what I would do. And then like find people that in there that you connect with and ask them to do something. Just take the initiative because they can't know either if you want to be their friend if you're not showing any signs.
It is just initiative, you know, starting, not being afraid to put yourself off there and not caring what other people think.
For sure.
I think it'd be good to get into the hypotheticals. We have a couple questions for you, just like random stuff,
Let's
but
do it.
um, if you were offered $1 billion to be locked in a room for 50 minutes, and there's a possibility that when you leave the room after the 50 minutes, you'll either be 50 days in the future or 50 years in the future, but you get to keep the $1 billion. Would you go into the room and be locked for 50 minutes and take that bet? And why or why not?
Okay, so
And it's wordy, so I can
I
re-say it if you need
so
to.
like I'm going into a room. There's $1 billion in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But the risk is I could come out and it's 50 years later, but I still get the $1 billion the 50 years
Yeah.
later. But I have to, do I age? Like, will I be like 70 when I come out, or am I 25?
That's a good question. I don't know. We could play both. Like you're either 75 and it's 75 years earlier, or you're 25 but life moved on 50 years.
I'll
Like
just save you all the trouble
all your
in
parents
the
are
room
dead,
no
all of
matter
that.
what. Like, no matter what, I'm going in the room. So whether I come out, 75 or I come out at 25, either way, I'm coming out with $1 billion. 50 days in the future. Sometimes that's like more interesting than the 50 years, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
things move so fast, like things happen so quickly. So either one of those I'm okay with. I definitely would go
Oh,
in
wow.
100%.
You'd be okay coming out at 50 years old, so missing 25, 26 years of your life?
Yeah, because it sounds like I'll be living after that,
Fair. Fair. No,
Like,
actually,
I can
that makes a very good point. You know, you sacrifice 25 years to live 30 potentially, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if you can lock in your health rating right now at 25 and you're 75, it's like, bro, I could still live like 30, 40 more years. So $1 billion would get me through the 40 years, I think.
And it just sounds like, like I'm getting to the finish line. I mean, like, you would hope that by the time you're like 75, that would be winning at life, right? So like I would have already won. And I do think of life as winning and losing, obviously. So that's fine with me. I'm okay with that scenario.
I like it. That's interesting. I wonder,
It-
though, what if you add in a kink that one scenario is 50 days in the future, but you get told what you'll look like and what your family will be like when you're 50, or you go 50 years in the future and you get to choose your family and like the end kind of scenario that you're in.
Yeah, I still would do the latter.
Okay.
And here's why. Because I couldn't, and people, it's interesting, like, I know people have gone to like mediums and like they do the psychic thing and like all that stuff, and I can't bring myself, because like I don't know that I believe in any of that, just to be honest. Like, I have no opinion on it really, either way, but I can't go to one, because either way, whether that woman, whatever she says, I'm going to have that in the back of my mind no matter what. And she could be someone off the street with zero idea and she's just bullshit. Like, for me, it would be hard for someone to give me like a fortune like that and know, like, and have an idea of the way something could end up, because that would really freak me out. Because like if she was like, well, you're going to be alone forever and like you'll be unsuccessful or something like that, like I'd be like, holy shit, how did that happen? Like, I couldn't do it. I like, it would get into my brain. I feel like it would really mess
Yeah.
with stuff. And that's something biased. That's like a psychological thing.
Yeah.
It's
I'm somewhat of a believer in some things are left better unsaid.
yeah.
And I think that goes to what you mentioned, even though that is a scenario that's potential for anybody.
Yeah.
Like, it's just something we don't tell ourselves, or someone isn't telling us, so we don't really consider it. And soon as it like is told, I think from an outside perspective, or if we start telling ourselves that, then you start to believe it. It's a weird way that our mind tricks us into believing things or telling things that never actually happened. It's like that phenomenon that you tell stories the way you view them, or the way you tell yourself that they happened, even though if there's a recording of it, that might not be how it happened.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yep. 100%. Because like I just don't want that like bias, the confirmation bias, or the like thing, or maybe I'll just unconsciously start putting my life in that space because someone told me that's the way it's going to go. So I've already decided, I've already made that up in my mind. So I can't do that. I
Yeah.
don't think I can ever.
Or it does the opposite, kicks you into another gear and totally motivates you to make sure that never happens.
That's so true. And that's
Here,
kind of the
you might
way
have
that
made
I
another
am
here.
anyway. Like that actually might work in my favor. Either way, though, I'm staying away from the psychics.
Fair enough. All right. Last hypothetical. What would you rather choose, to have it be nighttime or daytime all the time? So would you rather live in the night and it's always night? Would you rather live in the day and it's always day?
Live in the day for sure.
Yeah, that's what I said as well. I think it's way better because you can create a dark room to sleep in. Yeah, you can't create something like sunlight. Every light that you have going on in the house and stuff will be your only source of light, and that would be pretty brutal. We'd all be a bunch of pale, skinny people.
No, like I'm one of those people who use like the time change is my entire personality when it happens. Like the stupid 1 hour like makes it. I'm like, my God, it's so dark out, and like I'm angry. Like no way. I have to have the light. I love the summer. I miss the California weather. Sort of regret moving back. I don't know. Yeah.
That was super nice about Seattle because in the summer the days are so long. Like I'd literally be driving to the gym at like 4:50 and the sun is starting to come up.
Yeah.
And then I literally in the summertime the sun doesn't go down to like 10 or 10:30 p.m.
That is crazy.
And so it's I mean it's tough, but then also like in the winter it's tough because the days are so short. Like there'd be times where I'd go down into the garage of my apartment building, I'd get in my car, I'd drive to the gym is inside and it's all pitch dark, and then I drive back, it's all still pitch dark. I work from home in my office as a software engineer because COVID shut down the offices, and then it gets dark before I can even leave because I'm working till 5 or 6 p.m. at least, and then I just eat dinner in my apartment. It's like I never saw the sunlight for like 5 months straight, and I was living alone. So like that's so it can start to mess with your mind.
Sure.
But the summer's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think that was an awesome episode. I think you had a lot of really good things to say, and we covered a lot of topics. If people want to follow more of your story and follow what you're doing, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best. I'm not a big social media person elsewhere, but LinkedIn, you can definitely find me. Drivetrainrev.com is our landing page. Feel free to check it out, what we're doing. Happy to help in any way, even if that's just how to get into tech or life after athletics. So happy to talk to anyone who watches or listens to the podcast and is interested. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And if anyone listening to this podcast is in the sales role or early in their career in sales, I think Hayley is a great resource to reach out to and connect to. She's got a lot of teachings under her belt and would be a great opportunity to connect with her and learn from her. Thanks again for coming on, and hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks, you too. Thanks, guys.